Well, I mean, what we've seen in the last couple of months is a massive clampdown on freedom of speech and publication in the United Arab Emirates. That particularly affects a lot of people doing research there, but also people who live there and people like Matt and others who are part of universities operating in the UAE. So what we hope to is of course, getting immediate release of Matt from authorities, as well as probably making a push, in civil society in the UK to tell people about how bad the situation in the UAE has come. I'm actually very concerned. So if you look at the United Arab Emirates and their policy in the wider region of how they have clamped down on the freedom of speech against opposition forces, dissidents of all flavors, not just Islamists as they always say, but there have been torture camps, they've been affiliated with the UAE in Yemen, there have been torture camps in Libya where they've operated death squads to going after dissidents and people who think differently. So what we see here is that the UAE have taken a wider, much grander policy in the entire Arab world and Middle East against people who they don't like. The key issue is also, the way they've dealt with dissidents, opposition and people who think differently is usually accommodation and coercion. So coercion in the Middle East, so like I said, intimidation through repression, and accommodation in the West. So if there are academics in think tanks or think tankers in the Western world who think differently, such as myself, to the narrative of authoritarian stability of the UAE, they've usually taken quite a harsh stance trying to pay the think tanks off or centers off to get people fired or suppressing these voices from being heard. And this is a wider policy that's been going on for almost 5 years since pretty much, or 6 years since the Arab Spring actually started to occur in the region. Absolutely, and I think this is why everyone signed this letter. We're all concerned of not only for the life of Matthew Hedges, because he could end up being in jail for many, many months and years without any due diligence, without any rule of law, without any due process. There is no fair trial and no chance of fair trial because the allegations that were raised to him were completely ludicrous. The problem is here, if that is something that we just accept, and when I say we is the academic community but also policymakers in the UK, this is something that could have a wider impact on how academics, how think tankers, how the media are dealing with many of these very severe problems in the Arab world or in the wider Middle East. Because if the UAE is able to silence one of us, they might eventually be able to silence all of us. Yes, this is something that is felt, and when I say academia, it's everyone who's freedom of speech doesn't only affect academics, it affects the media, it affects journalists more generally, think tankers, but even policymakers. Everybody who is trying to engage with the Middle East is now being either accommodated, i.e. paid off, or coerced into basically stop talking about the negative implications of authoritarian leadership in the UAE, but also authoritarian policies across the Arab world, because the UAE are involved in Egypt, they're involved in Libya, they're involved in Yemen, and in all these countries, academics are being basically pressured to silence to basically speak out against all these atrocities committed by the UAE, and that is very, very worrying. And that is worrying for all people across academia, because there is a range of people, range of academics who have been banned from going to the UAE, including myself, because of what we've said in the media or what we've written about in the past.